All right, excited to be here today with my new friend, Derek Ali. So Derek is a 4 times Grammy Award-winning recording and mixing engineer. He's known for iconic tracks like Kendrick Lamar's Humble, Donald Glover's This Is America, and Diamond Certified The Box. He's also the founder of EngineEars, which is a pioneering platform that has raised over $7.5 million in seed funding as the backing of industry leaders like Kendrick Lamar and DJ Khaled. He also is an advocate for diversity in tech. He testified for California's SB 54, leading to its passing, which helps to promote more diverse investment in tech, accountability, and venture capital. And so Derek's the real deal. Like that's very, very impressive. And also I had a chance to connect with them, about a month ago or so to kind of prepare for this podcast. And, in addition to having accomplished some pretty remarkable success in the music industry, he's also someone that just seems to be very down to earth and humble, which is sometimes a rare thing to have, both in the same person. So Derek, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Nah, man, I appreciate those kind words. Grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, to kick things off, maybe for anyone that this is the first time meeting you or connecting with you, could you share just a little bit about your story and how you were able to grow to be able to become a 4 times Grammy Award-winning recording and mixing engineer?
Yeah, I'm trying to, where do we start? Self-taught audio engineer. I started my career back in 2006, 2007, with Kendrick Lamar, has recorded and mixed every album that he's put out. But yeah, the journey, man. Again, cliche kid, ADHD, trouble kid, played football, American high school football, and always been a hustler, right? While I was playing football, one of my, hustles, I've always been computer literate. My uncles for Christmas used to just give laptops and computer games. He was a computer engineer. So, he obviously, wanted to kind of give me, keep me updated, with the technology.
It's freaking sweet, dude. Your uncle was just was the laptop tech guy.
Yeah,
right. For some reason, I just imagine Inspector Gadget, as an uncle.
To a certain extent, man. He was one of the most progressive individuals in the family. Always had good jobs, and for Christmas, would always just spoil us. At the time, he had no kids, so my brother and I, reap those benefits. But yeah, in high school, figured out how to monetize ringtones early. Back when it was the Nextels or the Boost Mobile phones. When it was just those mono ringtones, I found an online program that allowed me to basically crack the phones and put real audio onto the phones before ringtones was, really a hot thing. So I would have buddies come over, after football practice, and we would record, these parody ringtones, your mom's just calling, pick up the phone, or, hey, this girl's calling, yada, yada, yada. And it kind of turned into a passion. The early setup was just my bedroom at my grandmother's house, a closet with the curtains, and bed sheets hung up with the gaming headphone microphone. So yeah, we would turn these 30-second clips into ringtones, and that kind of just sparked my interest in the arts of recording. Again, I had that ADHD. I was that kid that broke computers, took it apart, RC cars, broke it apart to see how it worked. And, granted, they might not work, after I put them back together, but it was just, understanding how it worked was a thing for me. And when I figured out you could do that with music, I think I was hooked, right? I can, have somebody come in and record a vocal that was never there, add instruments, break it all down, add different effects and fine tune it to my liking. It kind of had me hooked at that point. So we went from ringtones. I went through my DAW journey of going through those early cracked, what was my first DAW? I think it was a Cool Edit Pro. And then I moved up to Sony Acid Pro. And then, I ended up on Fruity Loops where I was tracking and mixing. And so, yeah, I just went from the ringtones to, me really, again, falling in love with the art, going through a journey of different equipment, different gear. And yeah, man, it just eventually, turned into my world. Dove into it deeper, didn't have the resources to go to the music school. So I was online heavy, blogs, forums. If you can remember the old Gear Sluts or Future Producer websites, I would post mixes and get critiqued, or look at DIY studio setups, and just a place for me to geek out with other like-minded individuals, right? All my friends at the time were in the streets or playing sports. Nobody wanted to be an audio engineer, right? That was the inkling, that was the beginning of mixed violin.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and it's always great to hear just the beginnings, the very beginnings. When there's someone like yourself that, is a 4 times Grammy Award-winning mixing engineer, it's easy to forget that you went through the same thing that basically everyone that's starting out had to go through, kind of that initial phase. I'm curious if Were there any like big standout moments or sort of breakthrough moments that you can recall that things just like massively shifted? You kind of had those breakout moments, or was it just a completely kind of slow cooker ride as you continued to grow your career?
Man, it was really a slow cooker. I mean, my journey from the jump, I think it was 2004 or 5, when I started with the ringtones. And I was just spending years just, again, understanding just what I'm doing. Didn't have no formal training in the arts of audio engineering. Didn't know what I was doing, right? I was just throwing plugins on a chain and twisting a bunch of knobs and just understanding what it did, right? Understanding how compression worked, understanding how parametric EQ works and all these different things just by literally just trial and error playing with it. So obviously it took a couple of years to kind of just understand what that was. And then building like a local name where like the local talent, local artists are now like, hey, I'm looking for an engineer. Like, can you record me? Because, early 2000s, social media wasn't a big thing. There wasn't too much software, or too many, platforms that allowed like the ease of recordings or even finding engineers, right? You only knew who you seen on a daily basis. I got lucky with working with some local talent that ended up being some of the biggest artists in the world now. So.
Yeah, that's super cool. So in terms of working with artists like Kendrick Lamar, it sounds like you connected with, like, you were both in a similar place in your careers when you started working together. So you're both like up and coming, and maybe you can describe a little bit about that experience for you, because I feel like a lot of artists, they might overlook the amazing talent that they have in their circles because they're looking for people that are already established when they might not realize that they could be working with the next Kendrick Lamar's, not because people are going to be like Kendrick Lamar's, but just like the next big act. But they're kind of focused on trying to find something external instead of cultivating what's already an opportunity in their network.
Yeah, I think it was just more of like, we weren't really thinking about the future at that time, right? It was more just creating, having a place to get away from, what our real daily lives consisted of, right? So I think naturally, just again, him wanting to be the biggest artist and me just really falling in love with the creative and wanting to now just be a master in my own rights. I think naturally, right, that's when just greatness comes, right? Everyone's just trying to be the best at what they do. When all that comes together, right, it's a formula for success. Again, I think the process of what, me and all the earlier guys, really did when we were in those early moments of putting together the mixtapes before things got crazy. It just given us that time, that space to kind of acquire that 10,000 hours, right? To really sharpen our swords, right? Before we get into the real game, right? The creative process that we had, it really molded me. I was grateful to have the opportunity to, work with artists like Kendrick or J-Rock or Absol or Schoolboy Q, because they let me be creative. They let me just do whatever, right? And that just opened up the creativity to where, okay, let me try these different vocal effects or these different reverb throws, or let me try doubling vocals to create different textures and layers, through effects. That kind of was a huge part of developing my sound, right? Which the industry ended up loving later on.
Yeah, so it sounds like really like one of the most important parts of your journey is just the initial discovery phase of you exploring and putting in the 10,000 hours to figure out how did all these different things work? And a lot of it was trial and error. And thankfully, you had creative partners that gave you the space to be able to explore and try out new things and see what worked.
Now, I would say that's one of the most important ones. I tell people now, I'm almost grateful that I didn't go the other route with going to like a music school first, right? I feel like these creators that go through those processes, they get taught in a box. And with creativity, with music, with sound, right? There are no rules, there are no limits. A lot of the old processes and standards that are being taught, are not really applicable in today's creative world. So early on, I was blessed with that mindset to, don't follow any rules. Throw reverb snare, a snare reverb on a vocal or a drum, or try this, random effect here. And just, as long as it feels good, as long as it sounds great, that's the ultimate goal.
That's a really helpful reminder to hear. Yeah, it reminds me of the Steve Jobs quote around you're thinking different, and specifically like it's the square pegs that don't fit in the round holes, like are the ones that actually change the world, that move the needle. Yeah. And so if you're basically learning how to be like everyone else, it's like, okay, great, another circle that fits in the same circle as everyone else. But it truly is, the people that think differently and the people that are the square pegs that chart their own way that can create something unique and different.
I agree with that.
Awesome. Derek, I know that you've been working a lot on this platform, EngineEars. And so I'd love to explore a little bit about what that is and how it works and what kind of artists we get the most value from it. And maybe to start with, could you just share a little bit of an introduction to EngineEars and specifically like What would you say is the biggest problem or challenge that you're looking to solve with the platform?
I'll start at the top level, then I'll double back on how we got here. But the problem that we're essentially trying to solve is just organization in the industry from a creative perspective, right? Me being an audio engineer and having to have dealt through my journey, right, from becoming from a nobody to now being one of the biggest engineers in the world, I'm still dealing with chasing payments. I'm still dealing with antiquated file processes, file transfer processes. I'm still dealing with terrible communication because we're the last creative before it goes out, to DSP for consumer consumption, right? We end up always just kind of footing all the stress. And if anything goes bad, it's really just on us, right? Because we're the last ones to really hold and touch these projects. So essentially, we built it out of necessity. There's a platform that allowed me as a creative profile. I can host my services, right? I can solicit my services to potential clients, and then they can instantly book me based on a service that I have available on my front-facing profile. And then once booked, the platform walks both sides, the artist and the engineer, through a workflow that holds everybody accountable on both sides, right? Not just the engineer. And at the end of that project, right, once the files have been approved and the mix or master has been approved, payment is then unlocked to the engineer, right? Where, I don't have to go and chase my invoices and get eviction notices because I can't pay rent for another month, right? So essentially, that bare bone iteration of EngineEars, which we launched 2022, was just that, right? Just allowing an engineer create a profile, host their services, right? Solicit their services, get booked for projects, go through our backend workflows that facilitate the collaboration between their clients, and issue payments and credit at the end. But it's grown so much since then. At scale, the goal for us is we want to develop the operating system, right? We see, the music industry and how it's evolving with technology nowadays. And there's a shift happening right now under our feet, right? With the introduction of AI music, with more tools being developed than ever. We kind of see ourselves, at a place that we could become that place that, audio engineers want to work, where studios want to host hourly studio sessions, right, for hourly fees, where artists now have the opportunity to search for and book a studio, get a song mixed, mastered, sell that music direct to their superfans, and then distribute to any DSPs, where they're then able to accumulate all their revenue, where they can go and create catalog now, right? They're going to have one place to, again, create, monetize on their arts, reinvest into it, and that loop effect begins. Again, our end goal is an operating system for the music industry, but we started with what was most necessary. But how we started the journey was, I reached this point in my career. This is like, 2017, 2018. We reached the top, right? We're winning Grammys, Kendrick's getting Pulitzers, like all the awards. We're traveling the world nonstop. And I kind of almost had this of like losing passion, because there was still a sense of me not understanding like how I acquired the success in such a short amount of time, right? How I've been blessed with working with generational acts and these incredible artists. I was a bit of imposter syndrome that was kind of tied into a lot of that. And I reached this kind of brick wall where I wasn't really inspired really too much on the things that I was working on. Obviously the world was, oh, this is incredible, this is a word, this is amazing. But, for somebody who doesn't truly understand it, the success, right, you kind of feel a bit lost. And, at this time I was on this journey kind of finding like what my own personal North Star was, like what's going to keep me going. It's proven I can make money, right? I can, I could do incredible things from creating a legacy, right? But where is that purpose? And it was crazy because as a kid coming up, I'm like, what the fuck is purpose? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm getting money, like we're having a good time. But, as you get older, you start to anchor up and you're looking like, what the fuck is all this for? And it sounds cliche and crazy to say, honestly, hearing it out loud. But, at this time, obviously, I'm at a height in my career, and I have tons of individuals in my DMs on social media, asking my process. How did you do this? How did you do that? How did you build a career? How did you, build a brand? And, as many people that I've noticed reaching out and doing it, I said, hey, there seems to be a community of individuals that, are thirsting for the things that, I acquired just through trial and error. And I remember the time that, I was on the gearsluts.com or the futureproducers.com on those blogs, right? I didn't have Instagram back then. That was my DMing, where I was, messaging people on the blogs. So I was like, oh, there's no real community in the audio engineering space like I felt when I was on my journey. Let me develop it, right? Let me see what that feels like. I would post like graphics on social media with, how Ali uses a CO1B or how Ali mics a mic, or just different things that I do, right? Just to show my process. And it got high engagement. Like people really wanted that information. So, from that, we decided, hey, let's try doing a workshop. Let's try to, show people how, I got to where I am through my exact journey, right? With my tools, telling my story like I just did, walking through the tools that I used, and then like a full deconstruction of one of those records in front of the class so they can really see the tools in real time, hear the before and afters, right, et cetera. So yeah, so going back, so EngineEars started as just an Instagram at first, right? A place where I would post tips and techniques and again, all the personal things that I acquired. And, from that, it led us to the phase two, which was developing these workshops, right? I went to all the booking agencies, the ICMs, the William Morrises, and they're like, yo, I don't see the value in this. Nah, like I'm not gonna help you set up a tour to go do workshops. So I'm like, fuck it. So we self-funded and hosted our first workshop in LA in 2019 at the 1500 Sound Academy in Inglewood. And it sold out within like 2 days. And it was crazy. It was a 5-hour workshop where the first half, again, told my story, talked about the trials and tribulations, the sleeping on couches and eating ramen daily, like all this shit that we've all been through. The second half was that, that deconstruction aspect. And that grew so fast, like, as we would post recap videos on social media, right? As photos were getting reposted, et cetera, we're now having just tons of people globally, like, yo, come here, bring it here, do that. This is amazing. So we did that, right? So we launched a world tour where from them we did workshops all through Canada, the States. We did Europe, Japan, Korea, and then I had South Africa and South America planned, but then COVID hit. So that kind of threw a wrench in just the momentum that we've built with EngineEars at that time, which was strictly just education. I started feeling purpose now, right? I'm like, yo, these people care about what I'm saying, and the mistakes that I made in all of these songs, it turned out to not be a mistake, but my style. So I'm like, yo, this is incredible, right? And it kind of re-empowered me to a certain level. But once COVID hit, we were stuck, right? It's like, yo, we've had this 1.5 year run of traveling the world, doing these workshops, educating, right? Really making a difference in these creators' lives on a global scale. And now we're just standstill, right? So, we were kind of forced to look at information that we gathered throughout that tour. And it was probably one of the smartest things that we could have done was we left all of our attendees with questionnaires, shirt sizes, shoe size, like what doll do you use, just so we can send merch and things and stuff like that. But we asked other questions like, what are some of the issues you're dealing with as a creative? And didn't realize how important that question was, because during COVID, when we were forced to really sit down and look at the information that we gathered, it's like, holy shit, like it's not just the education and the inspiration that we're providing through these workshops. These individuals need tools, right? I got an engineer in Hong Kong or an engineer somewhere, in Germany or France dealing with the same shit that I'm dealing with, from chasing payments, getting credited, bullshit file transfer processes, having trouble building my clientele list so I can actually scale my business. And that was the aha moment. Like, damn, it's the business tools. It's the tools that we have to develop for these creators. At that time, that at the time, the tech stack for an audio engineer was what? Dropbox, Cash App, Venmo, QuickBooks, emails, DMs. We're using all these platforms to kind of piece together, a business structure or business org, right? And it's not manageable. And somebody who doesn't, have that, that will to, put together all these platforms, who might not be as computer savvy or tech savvy to know these tools even exist, to put them together, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a hard time for them. So we said, hey, let's develop that. Let's develop a platform that allowed this niche creator to be able to grow, manage, and scale their, independent businesses. Because that's what we are. We're small businesses, right? We're contractors, That was kind of the inception all the way to the launch of the MVP of the EngineEars platform.
Awesome. So cool. Thank you for sharing all that, especially the part where you just transparently shared sort of like the purpose, part of, you had experienced, the success and this journey, that a lot of people would look at and be like, wow, I could only dream, of having that experience. And you having that experience, I think, honestly, all of us have this sort of like purpose question of like, what is this all about? What is this for? Who am I? And being able to share that, I think, is hopefully really inspiring for folks to understand that regardless of where they're at in their journey, like that's something that will always be there.
I mean, we're human, man, at the end of the day, and that's why, you said the humbleness and all that stuff, because it's like it never made the success or anything like that never made me. There was so long of me not understanding what's happening because I'm just in the studio 24/7. I don't, my head is down, just on a console listening to shit where, I don't pick my head up and look at what's going on around me, right? But that moment, it's like you don't really understand how important that moment of like purpose is until you've like reached a point to understand like what purpose is, right? So, 10 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but it was once having it all, is once you've, acquired and attained, level of success, and, once you've seen a lot of things, then the real questions start to fester in your brain. Like one of them, like, the fuck am I doing all this for? What am I spending, 20 hours a day in the studio. What is the reason for it all, right? Anybody can make money, right? There has to be some higher purpose that keeps you driven.
Powerful. Yeah, it seems like that purpose can shift and can evolve over time. Yeah, I'm not sure where I heard this, but it seems to ring true with your experience is that, at the beginning in our life cycle and our life journey, it's about us kind of like doing things for ourselves and you kind of reaching that pinnacle of success. And then maybe sort of like a tree blossoming, like there comes a point where it shifts from just this like initial blossoming to like bearing fruit and providing that fruit and that fruit falling and forming the seeds for the next generation. Yeah, I know as a father, I'm sure you can relate to that, just sort of the purpose that kind of comes from this parent-child relationship. But also it seems like there's something universal to this, the way that nature works, that the same thing applies to our own journeys and our own, like the fruits of our labor, that eventually, part of the purpose of whatever it is that we're doing here seems to be connected to this idea of paying it forward and being able to contribute, having the children relationship of the fruit falling. And so, I just wanted to honor you for having the willingness to share some of the things that you've learned. And I've heard it described before that of our purpose might be looking at what were the biggest challenges that I went through, or really like where was my darkest moment when I was getting started, and if we can essentially solve that for other people, that's one way to get attuned with our greatest purpose. It sounds like the platform that you built is really like built for a version of yourself that really needed to have this, that didn't exist back in the day. You didn't have the same luxuries as now that you've built this platform that you're being able to help solve for artists.
That's exactly right, man. Like, again, it was hell. I didn't have the education. I didn't speak the terminologies. I didn't speak the language. I'm a victim of my own ambitions in the sense of, when I enter a studio room, I'm asking all the questions there's a handful of engineers that I was grateful to meet early on that had me come to their sessions, and, they seen early that those guys going to take my job one day. And, it was just a lot of like pushing me away, right? And it was like, why? If a lot of those individuals really supported me in my earlier career, it probably, the relationship will probably be different, or, they might have a second life in their own career, or, whatever the case might have been. So it's just simple rules. Each one teach one. The way my journey, the way I did it, no one's going to do it that exact same way, but somebody might be able to learn from something in my journey that they can add to their own, right? It's legacy, man. Like, it's, again, man, what the fuck you doing dope shit for, man, if you're not trying to be talked about for 100 years?
Good stuff. Well, one topic you approached a little bit earlier that I'd be curious to hear your perspective on is around AI and the development of these technologies for generative music. And obviously right now we're sort of in the wild west of what these tools are, what they'll mean for the music industry and just like humanity, over the next like 10 to 20 years. But I'm curious, for someone like yourself who has been around and witnessed, some major revolutions just over time with different technological breakthroughs, how are you viewing AI? And what would your recommendations be for folks who are listening to this right now who maybe they're feeling a little bit concerned or a little bit afraid of AI and they're not sure, like, should I be using this tool or not? Or how should I be implementing this? Where do I get started? Like, what would your general advice be for folks as it relates to AI tools?
Music and AI, man, it's a topic because a lot of people don't understand it. It's a hot topic, I would say, because a lot of people don't understand it. And, the things that people don't understand, they always put the devil on it, or, they put it to the side. And the way I'm looking at it, right, from a creative that's turned like startup founder that understands these tools and how they can be valuable and detrimental, right, to the industry, right? I just did a lecture at Harvard at Claremont Hall, and we talked about this topic in particular, which obviously is a very hot one. The way I look at it from a creative standpoint, it's still early days, right? I think, AI music, like generated AI music as a novelty, right? I think it's going to be something that the kid that was never a musician is creating a meme song for social media, right? I think that is going to be like where you have users and creatives using it like once every couple months, right? It's just going to just always be there. But from the standpoint of it taking our jobs or taking this or taking that, I don't believe so. I think if anything, it's going to make us more efficient from a creative perspective. I think, think producers. If somebody is looking for loops, right? In the past, we've been plagued with having to clear samples and taking all of our publishing and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, where you can get a loop, an ethically generated loop, right? Obviously, I'm big on the ethics on AI and where these companies are getting training their models off of. but on the ethically created platforms that are providing these type of production loops, where now a producer can take that, sample that, chop that, and they're now able to generate revenue for themselves without having to pay a big split, to publishing or whatever. I think that's going to be the biggest net positive for creators. Mixing assist tool, something that we're looking to develop, where it's training you as it's giving you suggestions on how to shape or blend the 808 and kick drum, or, how to carve a snare, or et cetera, et cetera. So we look at AI music creation as a way to provide more efficiencies for the music creators, right? So they could do more, right? So, for those people like myself who didn't have access to the music schools and don't understand frequencies and blending of things and getting that perfect blend between the kick and 808, it can give you suggestions on how to achieve that sound if that's what you're looking for in real time as you're mixing. So there is some positive utility, but I think, man, a good friend of mine, Professor Kareem Lakhani from HBS, he says, it's not AI that's going to take over, it's the human enabled with AI that's going to take over. And again, as these tools develop, as, we continue to develop groundbreaking tools on EngineEars, again, we look to add value to the creative field to allow people to do more, create more, generate more revenue for themselves, create more opportunity for themselves. AI pairing algorithms that are pairing engineers with artists or artists with studios, et cetera. So it's more of, again, man, I tell the creatives that are listening, embrace it, understand it. Because there's probably a tool out there right now that's being developed that is going to be like your best friend in the sense of being able to be way more efficient in sessions or working with clients or managing files, like whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that sentiment around it. It sounds like how you recommend people kind of think about AI isn't necessarily as something to be like afraid of from a standpoint of like, oh, this is going to replace me, but to actually look at it as a tool, as a technology that you can use to extend your creativity, to do it faster, more easily. Without going down too deep of a rabbit hole, it seems like technology has always been about shortening the gap between idea and then like the fruition of the idea. And it starts with the thought. And basically, if you look around wherever you're listening to this podcast from, and you kind of look at everything that's at least man-made, started out as an idea, and then someone took some action and effort and time, and it turned into the thing. But there's always that gap, right? There's like the gap between it. And with technology, it basically just like shortens the gap, makes it easier to go from point A to point B. So it used to be that to travel across the world, you need to spend a whole lifetime. But now because of technology, because of airplanes, you can do it in a matter of hours. And every tool, every technology essentially seems to like shorten the gap between I have this need or this idea, and then you can actually make it happen faster, easier than before. Right. And it does seem like the only question mark I have around AI, and this is where it could go into like down a bit of a rabbit hole, is as it relates to the singularity and as it relates to like exponential increase and artificial intelligence. And like, is there a point where like that creative impulse, it seems like we're still kind of figuring out like, where does that come from? Right. And as I'm sure, like, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but it seems like when we're really tapped into like that creative impulse, a lot of people say like it's coming from a greater source or greater purpose. Like we don't even take responsibility for it because it's just like something that's happening through me. And we're still kind of figuring out like how do our brains work and what is that creative impulse coming from? When you talked about your story with the survey responses and seeing like the issues that people are describing, it seems like there's something with entrepreneurship and problem solutions where it's like there's like baked in, it's almost like a universal energy to like traction. Where's their challenge? Where's their struggle? Where's their issue? And that's like an opportunity for growth, or like where's the gap? Like there's a gap here from this to this. So I guess maybe that's where I could bring this back to the conversation. But like, what's your perspective on the creative impulse, and in terms of like, where's that come from? Especially you've been able to rub shoulders and produce some of the most incredible artwork that exists today. Like where's the source of that? Where does that come from? Is it from like higher level source, or where do you see that originating?
It's a great transition from the AI topic, right? Real quick, if I could just speak on that. That's why I believe the AI stuff, right? It's much more of a utility, a tool, rather than something that's going to take over. Because humans, they want to feel partial to somebody's journey, or they want to be inspired by somebody's journey. They want to go see that live. They want to be in awe with this presence of this individual while they're on stage performing. They want to feel that energy, which all stems from one's experience. Going to the question now of where does that inspiration kind of, come from? It's when it comes to a song, right? How I look at it, it's like this triangle trifecta, right? You got the artist up top, the engineer, the producer. I look at it like you need these individuals to create a song, right? Because everyone's journey, everyone's, what somebody's adding to that creative, like it's their own, right? Like a producer comes in, made a beat, right? Not even thinking about a particular artist in mind, or thinking about how the vocals will lay over it, right? You have an engineer that is taking these files that he's probably never heard before, as well as vocals that just got recorded, and trying to blend it. You have the artist now kind of creating, all the lyrics and everything based off their experiences, their journeys, their trials and tribulations, their passions, etc. So when it comes to where I feel like it draws from, I think it's for me in particular, right? Because I didn't come from the natural musical background. I didn't, can't play instruments. It comes from a feeling that I really can't even explain, right? I'd be lying to you if I said, hey, I was able to do this because the light was dim this way and I smoked this many blunts. It's just a feeling, when it's right. And I think that is almost one of my superpowers, because I'm not limited to, what one would look at as a negative. Like if a track is distorting, or if a kick is distorting, or if this, that, or third is not done by the book, right? I'll let that slide because to me, it feels good. So where that comes from, a higher power, you can say that, because I get this level of tunnel vision. The reason why I like to mix analog, where I still use these old huge consoles and all this outboard gear, because it feels like, I'm touching the music, right? I'm one with the electricity, right? I'm not just clicking the mouse, and activating ones and zeros with the code of the software. I'm actually touching the song, right? I'm painting on a canvas, so it's a little bit of preparation and understanding what you're trying to do, right? The basics, right? Understanding, how a snare or kick is supposed to sound laid over a vocal, how is a blend of hi-hats and all these different sounds, how it's supposed to come together. It's like a Rubik's Cube, man. You're constantly twisting and turning and pulling and trying to get all the colors to match, So I can't really say what other individuals, where they pull their inspiration or draw their inspiration from, or where the feelings come from on how they, put together these masterpieces that, that linger around for generations for people to listen to, right? But for me in particular, it's really just, again, it's that tunnel vision, it's that tunnel vision of searching for a perfect blend, or searching for that feeling that you get when a song is locked in. I'm kind of speaking top level. I don't know if you're kind of catching what I'm saying.
Yeah, man, I think this is super helpful. The big takeaway that I'm hearing is around, giving people faith to trust their intuition and trust how they're feeling and their sense of what's happening, and prioritizing that intuition over what they've been told, over what what people are telling them it should be. The education system tells them it should be. That really what's worked for you is actually focusing inward and paying attention to how does something make you feel, and paying more attention to that, right, than the quote unquote right way to do it.
And also just working, rubbing elbows with individuals that, that want to add that piece to the puzzle, right? Look at all the biggest artists in the world. They have these creative teams that they've grown with, right? You got the Jay-Z's and Gurus, right? You got the Drake and 40. You have these, the Kendrick, and that. You have these individuals that trust, like you said, a good word, trust, that their creative partners are going to do, whatever it is at the highest of their capabilities, right? And I think that's needed, that trifecta. I go back to the artist, engineer, producer, right? You need to have that triangle of creatives and everybody trying to be the best in their own rights to really break through, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds like a huge part of your own story, and really the platform that you've built, is about connecting, that triangle together, connecting those people, so that you're not trying to figure this all out on your own, but you actually can rub shoulders with, the people that fill in the gaps, or the parts that creativity comes from.
Access and freedom.
Well, hey, Derek, man, it's been great having you on the podcast, and thank you for taking the time to be here and to share your journey, and also for what you're doing with the platform that you built to be able to serve the wider community. It's awesome, and a lot of the things you were sharing, I relate with. We're in a slightly different vertical, but we had 7 or 8 different softwares that we were building on for digital marketing funnels for artists, like ClickFunnels and ActiveCampaign and all these different things. And it sort of reached this point where we wanted to be able to have an ecosystem or a platform that made it simpler for artists. And so I can kind of sense some similar themes in terms of the platforms that we're building together. So I'm looking forward to exploring more ways for us to collaborate and support the EngineEars platform. For anyone that's listening or watching this right now who just wants to explore the platform and sign up, the best place for them to go to connect more.
EngineEars.com is the domain, or follow EngineEars on social media. We just launched the overhaul of the platform, which we've spent all year building, which consisted of, us. Again, we've spent the last year and a half, right, with this MVP, talking to engineers, talking to artists, talking to studio owners, and learning from their experiences, right? And being able to, fill holes that might have existed, or, whatever the case may be. So we just launched a more mature platform that we're super excited about. We've been from the audio engineer studio standpoint, we've been on a wait list. We've had wait lists where we onboarded users on a monthly basis, but we've now opened that up to the public. And yeah, check it out. I'm excited to hear everybody's feedback. I'm excited to hear you guys' songs that are created and developed through the platform. And we're going to continue to develop groundbreaking tools that aid the creator community.
It's exciting. Yeah, that's a great time to have you on the podcast so we can celebrate that public launch together. Awesome. Well, like always, we'll put all the links in the show notes for easy access. And Derek, thanks again so much for being on the podcast.
Michael, man, thank you for the time.